Since the dawn of education, those seeking knowledge have banded together in groups of various sizes. The small classroom, or the large lecture. However, today, awesome space-age technology has given those who seek knowledge a third option, the videotaped lecture. Today, Keystone Production presents Senior Government. Topic, Marx. Oh wait, wrong Marx. Still the wrong Marx. That Marx. Today's topic, Karl Marx. Your lecturer is David Caraway. Thank you. Okay, when we left off last week, we were doing Marx stages of history. First, a quick announcement. I have a Marx handout for you. You should get this probably right now. It's in the podium while you're listening to this. For those of you who don't have the reading, Marx on Imperialism in India, I've got a link up on the web page, and there are a few left there in the podium. Please finish the reading. Okay, according to the clock, I have 27 minutes to do this, speaking to you from Sunday afternoon. I'm on the 7th grade trip. Hope the bus doesn't crash, or I'll be speaking to you from the great beyond. All right, when we left off, we were doing Marx, but first let's have a quick review. Okay, Marx, like Hegel, sees history in stages, but unlike Hegel, it's not the idea, the institution that controls. Okay, Marx is a materialist. He'll be a dialectical materialist, not idealist. And it's going to be how we make things, the social relations of production, how we organize ourselves into making things to meet our material needs that, for Marx, characterize the stage of history. Quick review. Marx calls mankind homo faber, or faber if you like that better, man the maker. We are material beings. Work is one of our innate needs. We feel the need, we have a need to work creatively, productively. It's how we meet our needs. We've evolved this over time. But over time we have also faced the problem of scarcity. Okay, also for Marx called the economic problem. It's part of the economic problematique, a fancy word for set of problems. Okay, oh dear, because of this economic problem, this problem of scarcity, we have evolved an instinct to hoard. Even when we have enough, we tend to hoard. Okay? Marx says this behavior isn't good, it isn't bad, it's what we do. He calls this heteronymous. Again, there's no value judgment here. It's like a house cat killing a sparrow. I mean, you wouldn't say the house cat has committed a wrong by killing a sparrow. Hunting is just what cats do. Okay? If you've ever owned one, you know they like to kill things. Okay. When we had left off, we'd gone through a few stages of history. We'd gone through primitive communism. where the means of production, that is our tools, were not very well developed, were hardly rational. And this sounds like a lot like a Rousseauian state of nature. It is, but Marx never uses that term, state of nature. Okay, with time, our tools evolved. We developed some agricultural techniques. This had to be organized. For Marx, all human production of any scale, trying to meet that economic problem, that scarcity, has to be organized. Okay, so primitive communism gave way to an ancient or slave economy, which cultivated economy in the Roman Empire. So Marx says the elements that are going to start the next stage of history are always incubating in the present stage. And the Romans came into contact with Germans. Moreover, the city of Rome, which was busy conquering, getting all these slaves to maintain the slave economy, that was a big drain on its resources. And in the meantime, wealth flowed to the countryside, to the great estates, to the great landowners. Oh, so we have a thesis, city of Rome. We have an antithesis, the great estates, feudal. And the synthesis is going to be feudal lords. Rome will fall in a revolution. Okay, the base of our economy is going to get out of whack with the superstructure. I'll explain those in more detail in a second. Rome will fall. There's usually violence to accompany this. And our next stage of history is feudalism. Now, in feudalism, we have primarily an agrarian economy. And one of the main means of production in an agrarian economy is land. Who owns the land? The aristocracy. The aristocracy own the land. We'll call those a thesis. And a little reminder, Hegel never used the words thesis, antithesis, synthesis, but we'll use them because they tend to work. Okay, when you are the dominant economic class, you run the government. You own the government, you get to write the rules. Okay? Remember, Marx says if you want to understand a society, don't look at its government, don't look at its culture, don't look at its customs, its law, all that stuff that Hegel would call the state. He said, no. All that is superstructure. And if you really want to understand it, look at the base. Look at how production is organized. The social relations of production. Take a look at that handout I gave you. And if you look, the third one on here, the third paragraph from the Critique of Political Economy, let me quote Marx here. In the social production of their life, men enter into definite relations that are indispensable and independent of their will. Relations of production which correspond to a definite stage of development of their material productive forces. The sum total of these relations of production constitutes the economic structure of the society, the real foundation, on which rises a legal and political superstructure, and to which correspond definite forms of social consciousness. The mode of production of material life conditions the social, political, and intellectual life process in general. It is not the consciousness of men that determines their being, but, on the contrary, their social being that determines their consciousness. Okay, we're turning Hegel around. For Hegel, it's the idea, the social consciousness that determines our being. Marx says, no, that arises out of the base. It's the base. It's the social relations of production that produce the superstructure, the ideas. I guess a really simplistic way to say this, and with a little bit of irony, Americans vote their pocketbooks. I mean, it's rather a Marxist statement, although I think most Americans who say that would be horrified to find out that they're making a Marxist statement. In other words, what's economically important to us, that's where we get our ideas from. Okay? We don't have capitalism because we have the idea of capitalism. We have the idea of capitalism because we have capitalism. Okay. Now, let us continue. Okay, in this economy, this feudal stage of history, we have the aristocracy. They write the rules. They own the means of production. And they convince the serfs and peasants to work for them, to support them. They might use religion. They might use this as the order of things. If that doesn't work, they have the threat of violence. They have the threat of violence. Okay? But they control the state. Now, this could go on for a long time, according to Marx. Marx is not as deterministic as he's often portrayed. Yes, there's an extravagant prediction now and then. Professor Portis says that quite well. But remember these words from Marx. Men make their own history. They do not do it in circumstances of their own choosing. You are born in a time and a place. You are born into a system. You don't get to choose those. But we make our own history. I think to find Marx overly determined is an error. Okay, the cities begin to recover around 1000 in the Common Era. And the cities which are very weak up until now, cities, I mean, what few people there are living in cities, they're generally paying tribute to feudal lords. Okay? But the next stage is incubating in this stage here. And as technology advances, okay, remember the technology is going to advance, techniques, our agriculture is going to increase. Historians of the Middle Ages now estimate that perhaps around 1000 AD, for every 1 grain a peasant planted, he harvested 2. But we get a heavier iron plow, 3-field rotation, legumes, all those advancements in the technology, and a technique from Marx is technology. And we get more surpluses. We get agricultural surpluses. By 1200, the historians tell us that we're harvesting 4 grains for every one we plant. Okay, the harvests go into the city. The cities have now something to trade. And there is a new class of people in the cities. They are traders, merchants. Okay, we're going to use the Frenchified version of the German word. We're going to call them the bourgeoisie. Burgers in German. And they begin to trade. And they're not very highly regarded. They're pretty weak, but with time, they're going to get wealthier. They're going to be larger surpluses. We'll have the fairs in Champagne. We'll have the Crusades bring in more goods. Okay, and a new class will rise. This bourgeoisie, this middle class will begin to rise. Now, okay, I know rising middle class is a historical cliche. You know, the middle class has been rising since the 11th century. You know, it's probably hit the moon by now. But still, there is some kind of truth to this. And we now have an antithesis. Okay, an antithesis to our aristocracy, and that is the bourgeoisie. Now, Marx says this can go on a long time. Okay, there's nothing that says we're going to get to a next stage of history. Okay, but there's going to be an external shock. In 1492, Columbus sailed, yes, you know it. Okay, he found China. No, wait, India. And people were really disappointed until, I don't know, Cortez, Pizarro. Hey, there are continents here for exploitation. Lots of silver is going to come back to Europe. And money, which had practically fallen out of use in the Middle Ages, but began to revive after 1000 in the High Middle Ages. Okay, we're now going to have silver, some kind of marker for savings. Okay, and this bourgeoisie is going to grow richer. They are going to grow more powerful. And they are going to chafe under the rules written by the aristocrats. You know, why are you an aristocrat? Because your daddy was an aristocrat. Okay. Remember, the dominant class writes the rules. The bourgeoisie are going to become richer, and they are going to become the dominant economic class. And when they are tired of these rules, okay, what's going to happen is the base is going to outgrow the superstructure, the base, the real part of the economy. The bourgeoisie are going to revolt. And we are going to have a series of revolts in Western Europe. Where would you expect it to happen first? Probably the Netherlands. These days, the most modern economy. In those days, the most modern economy. Okay, so the Netherlands will fight the 80 Years' War. Okay, it'll dovetail nicely with the 30 Years' War. The Dutch essentially a merchant republic. They have an aristocracy, but they're all merchants. Will liberate itself from feudal Spain. In England, it'll be 1642 to 1689. English Civil Wars culminating in the Glorious Revolution. And then finally, the big revolution, France. Okay, the French Revolution. The bourgeoisie will destroy the aristocracy and break the bonds of feudalism and write the rules that they like. And the bourgeoisie are essentially what we call today liberals in the classical sense. They're going to write a liberal constitution. Some kind of guarantee of freedom of speech, guarantee of property rights, no unreasonable search and seizure, no unreasonable restraint of trade. They're going to sweep away the guilds, anything that held back trade. Okay. Now remember, it's the dialectic. Nothing's ever lost. So after a while, they're going to want titles. So the children of the bourgeoisie, they're going to have the money, and the aristocrats are going to be broke, so their children are going to marry because you want to get a title. I mean, if you're wealthy, that's really cool, but you really want to be Lord Fauntleroy and be called, the third Earl of Chesterfield or something. Okay. The bourgeoisie is now the dominant class, but in doing this, it now becomes our thesis. In doing this, a new class is created. Okay, with the birth of industrial capitalism, with the increase in technology, steam, rail, okay, a new class is going to be created, and that's going to be the working class. And Marx, for this, is going to revive an old Roman term that he's going to call the proletariat. Okay, this is the working class, and we'll call these the antithesis. Now, how is this going to work? Well, first of all, Marx is going to find capitalism incredibly productive. Okay, I often don't hear that Marx didn't like capitalism. Well, he decried exploitation, he decried inequality, but capitalism for Marx has an historical mission. It has to develop the tools of the means of production. It has to develop our technology. This is an historical mission. This needs to happen if we're ever going to get to the next stage. And whether we're going to get there or not, that's a big if. Take a look at the outline. The handout. The Manifesto, 1848. The bourgeoisie, during its scarce rule, a rule of scarce 100 years, has created more massive and more colossal productive forces than have all preceding generations together. Subjection of nature's forces to man, machinery, application of chemistry to industry and agriculture, steam navigation, railways, electric telegraphs, clearing of whole continents for cultivation, canalization of rivers, whole populations conjured out of the ground. What earlier century had even seen a presentiment that such productive forces slumbered in the lap of social labor? Okay, we see then the means of production and of exchange on whose foundations the bourgeoisie built itself up were generated in feudal society. At a certain stage of the development of these means of production and of exchange, the conditions under which feudal society produced and exchanged, the feudal organization of agriculture and manufacturing industry, in one word, the feudal relations of property, became no longer compatible with the already developed productive forces. They became so many fetters. They had to be burst asunder. They were burst asunder. Okay. It's incredibly productive. Wow. I mean, we begin to employ capital as a tool. I'll explain that in a bit. Capital is not synonymous with money in Marx. Okay. Technology is going to advance. Think of all the inventions we're going to go through: the steam engine, the spinning jenny, the mule, the railroad. Fantastic. The population is going to increase. Human liberty is going to expand. Human liberty is going to expand. Okay, the bourgeoisie is going to write new rules. Okay, we'll have bourgeois constitutions in the United States, in France in 1830 with Louis Philippe. In Great Britain, the Great Reform, 1832. There's nascent liberalism in Germany. Marx had been one of those early liberals, all for property earlier on. And I guess this is the time to maybe make an analogy of how to explain how this superstructure comes out of the base. Okay, for example, take the game of soccer. Okay, that's culture. Soccer is culture. Soccer developed in England, late 18th century, probably earlier games than 19th century. Came out of feudal society. Feudal society, if you look at the economy of feudalism, it's not very diverse. Okay, most of us farm, a few of us fight, and maybe organize the farm, and there are a few traders and artisans in the few towns. But it's a fairly undifferentiated society. And if you look at soccer, well, if you look at the players, we're fairly undifferentiated. We have one specialist, the keeper. He can use his hands. Only he can use his hands. Okay, and on the field, the rest of us have to use our feet. Okay, we've got some specialty. We have players who play mostly offense. We have midfielders. We have some defenders. But if a defender sees an opportunity, at least in total football, Johan Cruyff, the Dutch, you know all about that, he needs to go forward and score. Okay, if an offensive player needs to stop a breakaway, he might act as a defender. But you would never see, for example, a midfielder with a clear shot on goal and say, oh, I don't think I'll take this clear shot on goal while their keeper's on the ground because I'm a midfielder, it's not my job. Yeah, you wouldn't do that. Now, about a feudal game. Think about American football. And think about modern capitalist society. We have all these specialists. Okay, we have doctors, lawyers, engineers, chemical engineers, civil engineers, mathematicians, school teachers. Okay, although some of us are generalists pretending to be specialists. Okay, charlatans. I'm just kidding. Highly specialized, complicated economy. And look at American football. Okay, we have quarterbacks. They call the signals. They can run the ball. They throw the ball. They're the brains of the outfit. Halfbacks who tend to run with the ball faster. Fullbacks who run with more power. We have linemen who protect them and the backs and clear holes for them. We have wide receivers whose job is to catch the ball. On defense, we have a set of linemen. We have linebackers whose primary job is run stopping. We have defensive backs whose primary job is to defend against the pass. We have one guy who just comes out and kicks the ball through the uprights. In fact, we have one guy who just comes out and holds the ball so he can kick it through the uprights. We have a punter. Look at we have an army of coaches. Even in high school, we had a defensive coordinator, an offensive coordinator, a head coach, a defensive backs coach, a defensive line coach, an offensive line coach. Now in modern pro teams, they have all these, and they even have full-time lawyers to study the salary cap. And I think if Comrade Carl were here today, he'd say, well, yeah, see the base, the economy, complicated, the social relations of production. That's where the superstructure comes from. Okay. Capitalism, very productive. It sweeps everything aside. The culture changes rapidly. Marx says we have released the most revolutionary force known to mankind. Again, perhaps another little irony that in contemporary politics, the defenders of capitalism refer to themselves as conservatives. Whereas, nothing changes the world as much as capitalism. Let me indulge me in one more example. Well, I guess you don't really have a choice because this is a videotape, but years ago, at the corner of Blanco and Fresno, it was a Mexican restaurant, Tex-Mex. I can't remember the name of it. And regular mom and pop's Tex-Mex restaurant, and they had a big sign, big electric fixed sign on a pole. On the top of the top sign was the name of the restaurant. Okay, and underneath it was another large fixed sign, not quite as large as the one on top, And that sign, again, in plastic panel, illuminated, closed Sundays for family and worship. Closed Sundays for family and worship. Okay. Culture, superstructure, the state. Okay. Then one day, after I'd been living in San Antonio a few years, driving by every day, there was a cloth banner tied over the closed Sundays for family and worship sign. Now, all of a sudden, it said, or on the cloth banner, it read, "Open Sundays for business and catering too." Suddenly, at least, Las Palapas, or I think that was the name of it, I don't remember. Family and worship were not as important, or at least not important enough to be closed on Sunday. And Marx would say, well, probably the owner of the restaurant figured I could make a buck by being open on Sunday. When he realized he could make money by being open Sunday, the culture changed. Again, economy changes, culture comes out of the economy. Okay, capitalism. Where's my eraser? Ah, here's my eraser. Now, how does this capitalist system work? What do we mean by capital? Okay, the capitalist, the owner of the tools, the owner of the means of production, okay, he takes capital, and capital is not synonymous with money for Marx. Capital is money employed as a tool, employed productively, okay? Keystone gives me a paycheck, I take $1 of my paycheck, I walk over to the pharmacy, I buy cough drops. That's money. Okay, that's not capital. Now, when the drugstore owner gets that dollar and maybe decides to use it to buy a new rack to display products on, that dollar is now employed as a tool and it becomes capital. Okay. So here we are, the capitalist employs his money as capital, and he puts in a factory, okay, and Dickens is lots of fun, so we'll call the factory Dark Satanic Mills Partnership, okay, partnership, it's owned by, I don't know, Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Ha ha ha. Okay, here we are in Dark Satanic Mills. And what do? Okay, they have steam engines and they produce cloth. Okay, or we'll just use widgets. Okay, they produce widgets. And they do these with infernal machines spewing out smoke, mangling children, all that neat stuff. Okay. How does this work? You remember from Marx picked up from Ricardo, a little bit from Smith as well, but from Locke, Marx picks up the labor theory of value. Okay, the labor theory of value. Remember in John Locke, only labor creates property. Okay, Marx picks up on this a little uncritically. Now, before you start, all you neoclassicals out there start going, wait a second, we got a different pricing mechanism, that's all right. Marx is doing this for a particular purpose. Okay, we're trying to understand, Marx is trying to understand markets as they connect with all other aspects of human activity. He's not studying markets in isolation and looking for the pricing mechanism. Okay, he's doing this just to study how we interact with markets.